Okay, so has anyone found anything new about what's been going on? Currently standing in beside a marble podium situated at the front of a high school known as Canterlot High were 7 girls who stood together in a circle, all of them showing expressions varying from interest, amusement, to even being somewhat scared. The girl who had just spoke was Sunset Shimmer, a member of a band made up of her and her friends known as the Rainbooms, and acted as a guitarist of the band. However, before becoming a student at Canterlot High, she was a unicorn who resided in a world known as Equestria and was tutored by its ruler, Princess Celestia. However, they one day got into a massive argument that resulted in Sunset running away to a parallel world where everyone was a human instead of a pony. Sometime later, and after attempting to rule over the world with a magical artifact and being stopped, she eventually began to become somewhat nicer as she became friends with the other 6 girls currently present. In addition, due to an incident at a summer camp known as Camp Everfree, she and her friends got their hands on geodes that seemed to contain magic from the world Sunset came from, which granted them different magical abilities. Sunset's geode granted her the ability to see a person's memories through physical touch. Other than what people have been talking about already, I'm afraid not. The girl who replied was Twilight Sparkle, or even called Sci-Twi by the others. She recently joined Canterlot High after an event known as the Friendship Games, where Canterlot High and another school known as Crystal Prep competed in various activities and events to see which school was the best. Prior to being enrolled at Canterlot High, she used to be the top student at Crystal Prep who encountered magic from Equestria during the event and caused a few mishaps here and there by accident. In the end, after being corrupted by the magic she accidentally stole, she decided to attend Canterlot High to learn more about friendship and equestrian magic. As a member of the Rainbooms, she acts as a secondary singer for the band. During the events of Camp Everfree, she managed to gain control of the magic she still had and also got a geode of her own, granting her the ability to levitate objects using telekinesis. Even so, what other people are saying is still somewhat scary, another girl said. This was Fluttershy, and as her name suggested, she was somewhat shy. She was pretty much shy around people, though she was known to be quite the caretaker of animals as she worked at an animal shelter. She was also known as one of the kindest girls in Canterlot High. As a member of the Rainbooms, she plays the tambourine. During the events of Camp Everfree, she obtained a geode that allowed her to actually talk to and understand animals. Yeah, everyone's on edge because of it, and even my attempts to cheer them up have failed, a girl beside Fluttershy said. This was Pinkie Pie, who was also known around Canterlot High as being one of the most energetic and party-loving girls in the school. She always knew a student's birthday and made sure to always bring a smile to a person's face. As a member of the Rainbooms, she acts as the band's drummer. After the events of Camp Everfree, she obtained a geode that gave her the somewhat destructive ability to make any kind of food, mostly sweets, explode after touching them. I agree. I sure wouldn't want to be walking down some hall and see a shadow staring at me from around a corner, a girl with a southern accent said. This was Applejack, a student of Canterlot High who also worked at an apple farm known as Sweet Apple Acres that was responsible for a lot of the apples that would be found in stores. As a member of the Rainbooms, her role is that of another guitarist, more specifically the bass of the band. After the events of Camp Everfree, she obtained a geode that granted her super strength. Unfortunately, I have personal experience. I wouldn't want to see that thing again, that girl next to Sunset said. This was Rarity, who was known to be a fashionista who could design and create a variety of outfits for any situation. As a member of the Rainbooms, she acts as the band guitarist and costume designer. After the events of Camp Everfree, she obtained a geode that gave her the ability to create diamond shields that were able to withstand almost anything. This thing is even messing with the soccer team. A lot of the other members are so paranoid that they can't even focus. The last girl is Rainbow Dash, captain of the soccer team for the school sports team, the Wonder Colts. She was also one of the more athletic members of the school, as she also dabbled in other sports as well. As a member of the Rainbooms, she acts as another guitarist and the lead singer. After the events of Camp Everfree, she obtained a geode that grants her super speed. Sunset sighed after everyone explained that they weren't able to find anything. Alright, let's just go over what we know and see if we miss anything. Twilight? Sunset said as she turned to Twilight. Twilight pulled out a notebook and began to read off a few things that were listed. Okay, so 2 weeks ago, reports of students claiming they saw some sort of shadow peeking at them at random locations in Canterlot High began to pop up. Students claimed they saw the shadow peeking at them, only for it to disappear after they either blinked or went to investigate it. They also claimed that they felt anxious and fearful while the shadows were there, only for those feelings to vanish as the shadow did. It's true. When I was looking at it, I felt as though I was on the verge of having a panic attack, only for it to disappear as soon as it did, Rarity commented. Other than that, all we know is that it lingers for about 30 seconds at most before it disappears, and that it doesn't show up staring at the same student twice, Twilight concluded. What about the part where it looks like a weird snake? Pinkie asked. Well, yes, that too, Twilight said. Sunset, are you sure you don't know of anything from Equestria that matches its description and what it's been doing? I'm afraid not. The closest thing is a unicorn that utilized dark magic who could transform his body into smoke. Princess Twilight explained who Sombra was while we were messaging each other when this first started. I just feel like we keep running into dead end after dead end. So I'm guessing that last bit also has to do with you still not having found some place that will let us play, Rainbow asked. Unfortunately, I feel like I've tried everywhere and I need to focus more on what's been happening around here. I don't know if equestrian magic is involved, but if it's dark magic, I can't ignore it, Sunset responded. Don't worry, Sunny, we're here for you, and we'll make sure that wherever you manage to get us, it will be an amazing first gig, Pinkie said, trying to cheer Sunset up. And besides, I'm sure Granny and the others won't mind if we use the farm if you can't find anywhere that'll let us play, Applejack said. Thank you, but my main priority is getting to the bottom of this, Sunset said. Moments later, the school bell began to ring, signaling that classes were about to start. I'm sure we'll find something soon, Fluttershy said. Maybe something might show up during school. Maybe. Anyways, we can discuss more during lunch. We have to get to class, Twilight said as she began heading towards the school, shortly followed by the others besides Sunset, who lingered a bit behind as she was trying to think of any more places that would allow the Rainbows to play, as well as think of any answers as to what was happening. However, unbeknownst to her, peering over the side of the marble podium and straight at Sunset was a shadowy entity that was serpent-like in shape, had spikes coming out of its sides, and had 6 tendrils coming out of its back. As Sunset walked into the building, 2 glowing red dots appeared on what appeared to be its face, followed by a thin, glowing red smile as the shadow had finally found what it had been looking for. It then faded away, only to appear in the school out of sight of anyone's view as it began to follow and watch Sunset as she went through her school day. All throughout the school day, Sunset had a small feeling of anxiousness that she simply put aside as her desire to figure out the reason behind the appearances of the shadows students kept seeing. All the while, said shadow kept stalking her throughout the day and watching her while staying out of sight, from hiding inside a shelf containing various vials and beakers in her chemistry class to peering behind a bookshelf in her history class. It was during this time that Sunset ultimately decided she may end up having to take the offer for the Rainbows to perform at Sweet Apple Acres. The place could probably comfortably hold a small concert, and she had also heard of powerful spellcasters in Equestria who started off casting spells at small taverns and inns before they were allowed to study and use magic on a grander scale, meaning that the Rainbows could also start off doing small gigs before being able to play at bigger places. As the bell rang, signaling the lunch period for all of the students at CHS, Sunset made her way to the cafeteria and got her lunch before sitting down with her friends. Meanwhile, the shadow slipped under a nearby table and continued to watch her. So, did anything new show up regarding the shadow? Sunset asked hopefully. Sorry, Sugar Cube. We asked around, but other than a few more students saying that they also saw it but were more anxious to talk about it, I'm afraid there's nothing new, Applejack said. Sunset let out a sad sigh as she'd been somewhat hoping that something new would show up, either the shadow doing something new or finding anything that could hint about what it could be. Really, she felt like she needed a breakthrough, and it was at that moment that Sunset thought of something that could potentially help solve this mystery, and considering how the weekend was coming up, she felt that it might be as good of a chance as any. Girls, I think we're gonna need some more help, Sunset said. What do you mean by that? Twilight asked. I think I may need to go to Equestria and get some help from Princess Twilight. Didn't you say you've been asking Twilight about if she knew anything about what's been going on? Rainbow Dash asked. Well, yes, but the thing is, neither of us have been able to find anything. The idea was to hopefully just put our heads together and see if there's anything in either her library or anywhere else, Sunset said, though she was also hoping that talking with Twilight could give her some advice on the trouble she's been having with finding a place that would allow the Rainbows to play. Looking at the others, they seemed to think that it was over before Rarity spoke up. Well, I suppose I can agree with this idea. You do? Sunset asked. Certainly. You haven't been able to find anything on our end, and you said Princess Twilight was having trouble finding anything as well, so it might be a good idea for you two to work together. I'm sure you would be able to find something. I'm with Rarity, Pinkie exclaimed. We need all the help we can get if we want to turn everyone's frowns upside down. Besides, I want to go and see Ponyme and trade party advice. You know it will just be me going, right? Sunset asked. I know, I just haven't seen Ponyme in a while, Pinkie said. Sunset was about to ask when Pinkie visited Equestria before Rainbow Dash began talking. The point is, all of us can continue investigating this thing while you're working with Twilight, and then, when you two figure out what's going on and then come back, you'll make the shadow regret messing with Canterlot High, Rainbow Dash said. Sunset smiled a bit as the others also explained that they were on board with the idea, as well as offering words of encouragement, or in Pinky's case, also asking them if she could bring some of the baked goods the pony version of her makes so she could supply them at her next party. The shadow, on the other hand, seemed happy at this revelation and slid out from under the table it was hidden under and out of the cafeteria without none of the other students even noticing. After lunch, Sunset and the others continued on with their days as they finished the last of their classes before the school bell rang, signaling that everyone needed to head home. As the 7 of them left school, all of the girls gave Sunset words of encouragement and wished her luck with finding anything about the shadow. They also asked her to ask Princess Twilight how she was doing and that they hoped she would come and visit and possibly even watch them perform. This caused Sunset to become a little bit down for a bit, though this was almost immediately replaced with confidence as she felt that when the whole business with the shadow was over, that she could put more of her focus towards finding a place for the Rainbooms to perform. Several minutes and a mile walk later, Sunset eventually made it to the building where her apartment was, and after making her way up a couple flights of stairs, she eventually reached the door to her apartment and entered. The apartment itself was somewhat simple, as it was mostly one big room that was separated into different sections that all had a different purpose. The living room was right in front of her, which consisted of a couch and 2 cushioned seats around a coffee table that faced a TV that was set on top of a cabinet against the wall. Next to the TV were a few gaming consoles that were hooked up to the TV as well. Within the cabinet itself were a variety of different video games that Sunset would play and make videos of to later upload them to her gaming channel for people to watch. Right next to the cabinet was a desk that held a desktop computer that Sunset used to edit and upload said videos. To Sunset's left was the kitchen, which consisted of a fridge that was right next to a stove and oven. Right above said oven and stove was a microwave, while right beside it were cabinets that held various dishware and silverware. Towards one of the corners of the apartment was a door that led into the bathroom, which was somewhat simple as it had a basic toilet that sat beside a sink and mirror with the shower at the end of the bathroom. Finally was the loft, which was right above the kitchen and was accessed via a small staircase set into the wall. The loft acted as Sunset's bedroom, with the bed set within the middle of it against the wall, while 2 dressers were set beside it holding Sunset's clothes. On top of the dressers were various photos that showcased Sunset as well as her friends. Some of these being the 7 of them holding their instruments and looking as though they were about to play a song. An image showed them grouped together while smiling at the camera just after the friendship games had ended and Twilight had transferred to Canterlot High, and an image showing them fixing a dock at Camp Everfree as they looked as though they were having fun. The next few hours were spent with Sunset getting everything she needed and packing them into a backpack she had gotten from Rarity, with all of them getting a custom-made backpack from her, with her saying she was hoping to get some inspiration from attempting to make a backpack. Sunset's in particular was a dark red and had an orange and yellow flame decal running across the bottom with the same sun design on Sunset's shirt on the top of the backpack right under a zipper. There were actually 3 zippers that allowed access to 3 different sections of the backpack that all had various pouches where small items could go. Finally, on each side was a black pocket where bottles can be held, allowing Sunset to store bottles there and easily access them while wearing the backpack. Among the things Sunset packed were some notebooks that she could write some stuff down in, a variety of pens that had different colors of ink, and finally, a book with a brown leather cover, 2 gold stripes on the spine, and the same sun design on her shirt and backpack on the front cover. This journal was somewhat special to her, in more ways than one. Back when Sunset was still a student under Princess Celestia's wing, Celestia had given her this book that was enchanted so that anything written in it would be copied to a book Celestia had. That way, the 2 of them could talk to each other if they were far away, even across dimensions. When Sunset had come to the human version of Equestria, she had taken the book with her. It wouldn't see use until the Battle of the Bands, where Sunset is used to contact Equestria's Twilight to ask her to come in to help deal with the group of girls known as the Sirens, who had caused destruct and anger through their sinking. After that, she regularly used the book to keep in contact with Twilight, either by telling her about things going on in her life or asking for help with trying to figure out things. The reason she was taking it was that she was hoping Twilight could copy the enchantment and put it onto 2 more books in case the one they used ever ran out of pages. Before packing it, however, Sunset opened the book and grabbed an orange pen. A little while ago, Sunset discovered that the color of ink used to write in the book would also appear in the other, meaning that if a message wrote in orange ink was written in the book, the same message would appear in the other book and would also be orange. After discovering this, Sunset decided to use pens with orange ink to write in the book as a small joke that Twilight eventually caught on to and began writing in purple ink in response. Dear Twilight, this is to inform you that after much thought and consideration, I decided that I will be coming to Equestria early tomorrow morning, roughly 6 a.m. The reason being is that after we haven't been able to find anything relating to or hinting at what the shadow could be, I was hoping that there might be something in Equestria that may explain as to what we're dealing with. I'm also hoping that by putting our heads together, we may also be able to solve the situation as quickly as possible. Your friend, Sunset Shimmer. After waiting a couple of minutes, text began to appear right under the message Sunset wrote as Twilight wrote back her own. Dear Sunset, I believe that this could be a great idea, and I would be happy if we came to Equestria. Believe me, I've been searching the whole library for anything about the shadow, and while I have yet to find anything, I believe that we may be able to find something together. Might be able to ask Princess Celestia or Princess Luna if they may know anything. Regardless, I look forward to your visit. Your friend, Twilight Sparkle. Happy that Twilight responded and that she agreed with the idea, Sunset put the book inside her bag and finished packing, after which she continued on with the rest of her day by simply editing a few videos that she had been working on for a little while. Once they were finished, she uploaded the videos to her channel before eating dinner that was just a simple sandwich before she took a shower and headed to bed, not before setting an alarm clock on the dresser next to her that will allow her to wake up early tomorrow. It was almost 6 as Sunset finally made it to Canterlot High. After waking up from her alarm and letting Twilight know that she was on her way, she grabbed the backpack she had prepared the night before and rushed to Canterlot High as fast as she could, where she now currently stood in front of the marble podium in front of the school. Not a lot of people knew the secret of the podium, as the only people that really knew were Sunset and her friends. Essentially, the podium in front of Sunset acted as a portal that allowed those who walked through one of its sides to travel to Equestria. However, this would also change their body to match that of their equestrian counterpart, and the same was true for those that traversed the portal in Equestria that led to this version, transforming the pony who walked through into a human and making them look like their human counterpart. Sunset still remembered when she got here for the first time, as she remembered having to take a long time getting used to walking on 2 legs and not being able to use magic. As Sunset stood beside the podium, the shadow that had been following her yesterday peered at her from a corner of the statue and watched her. Alright, just get to Equestria, meet up with Twilight, and hopefully we can find out what the shadow is and find out why it's appearing and watching students. And hopefully she can give me some advice regarding the band situation. Sunset let out a sigh, and after looking around to make sure no one was watching her, she began to press her hand against the side of the podium. As she did, a light surrounded it as it began to phase through the surface as Sunset began to go through the portal. It was at this moment that the shadow made its move. It immediately dove into the portal, which had the immediate effect of causing an intense pressure to weigh upon Sunset's arm that felt as though something was crushing it. This in return caused Sunset to immediately yank her arm out of the portal and took a few steps back, as she had not been expecting that to happen. Ow! What in the name of Celestia? Sunset swore as she looked at her arm. Thankfully, other than it feeling a bit sore, it didn't appear that anything was broken. That shouldn't have happened. Why did the portal... Sunset trailed off as she looked at the podium. She watched as the side of the podium began to darken, slowly turning from the white marble that they were, before they became a dark gray, and eventually became pitch black. Cautiously, Sunset slowly approached the podium and looked at the now dark surface of the portal. She then reached out again and placed her hand onto its surface and watched as her hand sank into it, though she immediately yanked her hand back out as she watched the dark surface begin to slowly crawl onto her arm. Then, Sunset further stepped back as she saw 2 glowing red dots appear within the surface of the portal. Seeing this, Sunset began to feel an overwhelming feeling of fear as she felt though those dots were staring into her soul, and then a thin red line appeared below the 2 red dots and slightly curled upwards. It was at this moment that Sunset realized she was staring right at the face of something looking through the portal. Without warning, a shadowy tendril with a red spike at the end of it shot out of the surface of the portal and wrapped around Sunset's arm tightly and slowly began to try and pull her in. What the? Let me go! Sunset yelled as she began pulling away from the portal while trying to pull the tendril wrapped around her arm off. However, it was to no avail as it felt as the tendril had an iron grip around Sunset's arm. Then, a second tendril shot out of the portal and wrapped around her arm and began to pull, causing Sunset to only be able to try and pull away from the portal. Help! Someone help! Sunset called out, though no one was around to hear her pleas. Finally, one last tendril shot out of the portal and wrapped around both her backpack and her torso. And with one hard yank from the tendrils, she found herself being rapidly pulled into the portal. Sunset could do nothing as she was pulled into the portal's dark surface and could only watch as the darkness obscured her vision and she was pulled completely through. Once Sunset was completely pulled through, the surface of the portal began to slowly brighten as it returned back to its original color as though nothing had happened. After Sunset was pulled through the portal, the tendrils continued to drag her as she felt a strange wind rushing past her. However, she slowly began to feel dizzy as though traveling through whatever the tendrils were pulling her through it felt wrong. A wrongness that Sunset's body couldn't handle. Eventually, as she began to see a distant light, she would lose consciousness right before the light engulfed her. As the light faded, Sunset's body could be seen being slowly dragged through what appeared to be some sort of rift where the entrance of Canterlot High could be seen through it. After she was pulled completely through, the rift began to shrink before it disappeared. The place that Sunset was dragged to was, to say the least, very strange. Around her were various floating landmasses made up of dry and cracked red dirt that all floated in a dark blue void where dark clouds could be seen swirling within it. Some of these landmasses had trees growing out of them that were tall and spiky in appearance, and some of the landmasses also had pools of water in them, with waterfalls flowing into them from landmasses above. However, the strangest thing about this was some of the landmasses were angled in different directions, though water could still be seen flowing from one angled landmass to another, as if the laws of gravity didn't apply here. Once Sunset was completely dragged through, she was pulled towards the shadow that had been watching her the day before. However, this time it was several times larger than before and seemed to tower over Sunset. At the moment, its eyes and mouth glowed non-stop, with there now being glowing red rings circling its body as well. Then, it began to speak. Finally, after all these years of searching, I finally found the one I have had to search through countless dimensions and other worlds in order to find one worthy and capable of the task I have for them. And now, I finally found the one who will be able to help carry out my plan. The one who will help me get revenge on Father. The ones who will be able to stop her. I understand that she's carrying out her plan solely out of the care of the others and even me, but she must understand, if she manages to complete her plan, then the original world and its inhabitants will be killed, their essence broken down into nothing and unable to be recreated. As her father, she will help ensure that he's punished for what he has done, the shadow said while looking at Sunset. It then looked out at the swirling void and all of the floating landmasses in reminiscence, as though it was thinking of a long time past. I truly do miss the original world, how beautiful and orderly everything was. Now, after Father cast me and the others into this one, we have to live in a world where everything is a chaotic mess, a world on the opposite side of the original one. Even if we were cast out, we have managed to survive and endure for millennia, able to adapt quickly to our new home. I have been beginning to call this place home. It seems that not everyone has decided staying here. Why else should she be carrying out her plan? The shadow then returned back to Sunset, who was still passed out, and gave it an amused chuckle. To think that the human I chose is not actually a human, but is from that alternate world filled with colorful talking horses. I would assume that you would have gotten used to traveling through dimensions, but I suppose that traveling to here is quite different than hopping through that portal. Nonetheless, the shadow trailed off before looking at the ground nearby, and using its powers, managed to create another rift on the ground. Through it, a small field within a dark forest could be seen. You who have chosen to act as my chosen hero, you will go into the original world and assist the one chosen by Mew. You will journey with him and disband the groups created through her actions. You will unearth the dark secrets the original world had been hiding for the past several years, and you will stop her plans and ensure the original world's continued existence. Then, when we meet face to face again, and when you have proven yourself to me, I will allow you to return back to the dimension from whence you came, the shadow said as it lifted Sunset over the rift. Now go, and fulfill the role I have given you. The shadow released its grip on Sunset, causing her unconscious body to fall through the rift, with said rift closing right behind her. I'll be keeping an eye on you, Sunset Shimmer, and I believe Father will as well, as I'm sure he wasn't expecting me personally to play my hand against one of my own people. It was early in the morning, as it was still going to be a little bit before the sun broke over the horizon, the middle of a dark forest within a small clearing. A rift opened a couple of feet above the ground in which Sunset fell through and landed on the grass with a soft thud. After which, the rift closed right above her, leaving Sunset lying in the clearing. Towards the edge of the clearing and watching behind the trees, various animals had watched Sunset fall through the rift. Though these didn't appear to be normal animals. Some were caterpillars that were around a foot in height. There were purple and light blue four-legged animals with large ears and whiskers, and oddly enough, there was a gaseous, dark purple orb with eyes and a mouth. All of them watched the girl with interest, though they began to hear grass rustling and saw a figure walking into the clearing. They all scurried away to avoid being seen. The figure in question was wearing a robe with a hood that obscured their face. The robe itself was black in color, with the trims of the sleeves being red, while the hood of the robe was white. Finally, the collar of the robe was red and puffy, giving off the impression that the collar was soft. As soon as the figure entered the clearing, they stopped and spotted Sunset's unconscious form laying on the grass. Curious, the figure slowly approached Sunset and observed her. Wanting to make sure she wasn't awake, the figure used their boot, which was black and was red at the bottom, and nudged Sunset a couple of times. Seeing how she wasn't responding, the figure began to think out loud.
Now what is a girl like you doing out here so close to the base? Never mind that. I'm sure Persephone wouldn't mind using you as a sacrifice in the next ritual. If the one later fails and runs off, we could use all the sacrifices we can get,
the robe figure said. They then leaned down and in one swift motion, picked Sunset up and hung her body over their shoulder. Keeping both hands on her as to not let her fall, the figure walked towards the edge of the clearing and began following a path that led out of it. A couple of minutes later, after following the path and taking a turn here, or that when the path split, the figure eventually arrived at a large rocky hill. Going towards the back, the figure climbed a couple flights of stairs before they eventually reached the top where there was a large rocky mound. There, the figure then approached the mound until they reached an outline of what appeared to be a door. They then knocked a couple of times before a voice began to talk through a small speaker embedded within the mound.
Password?
The voice asked.
Culberberry.
The robed figure responded.
Correct. Come on in.
The voice said before the speaker shut off. After which, a thin line appeared right in the middle of the outline, separating it into two halves, after which both halves slid into the walls, allowing the figure to walk through the dark entrance that had been made. Once the figure and Sunset both disappeared into the darkness, the halves slid back into their original position, closing out the entrance and leaving Sunset to be taken into whatever was being hidden within the rocky hill.